Villains. You love to hate them, but eventually, if you play D&D long enough, you live to become one. We turned our narrative on its head for a very special session this past October, the Night of Falling Stars. And we're having another special session on November 3rd, and we want you to be a part of it on this episode of the Vanguard Chronicles. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Vanguard Chronicles podcast, where we have an ongoing conversation into the creative process behind the Vanguard, our monthly crowdsourced D&D campaign of interconnected one-shots. I'm one of the hosts and dungeon masters of the Vanguard, Nathan, also known as Spark Ascendant, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host. If you've been listening this long, you know him. It's Sean, a.k.a. General Grom. How's it going today, General?
Oh, it's going really, really well, Nathan. We've had a busy couple of days and a busy week from our last session, and the live stream test that we did a couple of days ago has been interesting, but a lot
Yeah.
of fun, and we're a little wore out, I guess.
Way to throw out the understatements. We've definitely been, as I say a lot when we're recording our bumpers, we've been cooking a lot, man. So we have a lot to discuss today. We've got something really excited, but real quick, we just want to talk for a little bit. We have been pushing so much. The reason we're tired and really excited and kind of feeling a lot of emotions, honestly, is
Yeah.
because we are getting ready for Tabletop for Chop on November 3rd at our local game shop, the oldest game shop, I believe, in the state of Delaware, Days of Nights.
Yes, it is going to be a fun event. We're really putting a lot of energy into it. And yes, we are tired because it does take a lot. It does take a lot of resource and a lot of commitment on our parts. And I'm, proud that we all do this because we do it because we love it, and we do need, help. And there's struggles and challenges that we've kind of been running into as we build this. But it's fun, and I think we're still, our excitement level's there. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
But such great challenges to have, too, because we've had, for those who don't know, if you check our YouTube channel, specifically, you can find us with at Vanguard Guild DND. That's ND, Vanguard Guild DND on YouTube. Or also, if you check twitch.tv/Vanguard Guild DND, you can see the two test streams we've done just testing out the equipment for Tabletop for Chop, which, I mean, at this point, we usually talk about our charity endeavors. Is going to be how long exactly is this marathon going to be, Sean?
This is again, we're ambitious, and we've always decided. I believe you can't hit home runs if you don't swing for the fence. So we always come up with some big and interesting ideas to try to challenge players. We're going to talk about that, the challenges that we had in this podcast. We're going to talk about that special event, but this is a special event for us to put out and make our final push for the year to make raise as much money as possible for extralife.org, our charity. I know we talk about it in every episode, but it is important to us, and we're very passionate about it because it does help kids. And if you change kids' health, you can change the future. It is such an important endeavor for us as a guild and as members. I think all of our members kind of understand that too. So yeah, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, specifically, it's going to be a full-on marathon from 10 to 10
Mhm.
Eastern time, where we'll have 3 games, and it'll kind of be for those who can't actually play at a Vanguard Unites game. It'll almost be like 3 months worth of storytelling for us, all in a single day. So we'll have 3 different DMs. I will actually be the third one for that day, starting at 6 p.m. But 3 different DMs over the course of the 12 hours are each going to run a different one-shot for a different group of players. All of these players will have paid to participate. All the proceeds going to, I almost said Tabletop for Chop, going to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia through Extra Life. And then all of these stories will be connected in the furthering tales of the Vanguard. So look out as our actual storytelling in our sessions. It'll give you guys a sense of what we do. And yeah, it's just going to be an accelerated day of playing D&D to help out kids. And as I say every episode, I'm stoked. And the planning process has been so much fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. It's been very challenging, but it has been fun. Yeah, this is going to be something that for those, again, like those who haven't been able to attend one of our events get to see what it's really all about. But there will be also we'll have other tables for streaming, not streaming games. We'll have 3 other Vanguard related games. I think you might be DMing one of those. We haven't tapped you for that resource yet. We might just do that now. But so there will be a lot going on. We're going to have some other TTRPG games in a different part of the gaming store that are going to be run by some very fun and great DMs that volunteered to step up to run. I think Call of Cthulhu is one of them.
Yeah, that one's being discussed in the Discord quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah. There's I think was it X Crawl, the dungeon crawl? There's going to be one of those games. That's going to be a lot of fun. So there's a lot, and we do have tickets available. So for those who haven't gotten their tickets, we'll have links in the description. We'll have the QR code to make sure you guys can get your tickets because they are selling out fast. Please, if you haven't got one, grab one now because they will disappear.
I think they're doing Monster of the Week too.
Yeah, I think that's the other one too. That should be fun. I almost may sign up for that if I wasn't hosting, because I will be hosting. I'll be in the chat rooms. I'll be, encouraging everyone to, because part of this too, I don't think we've really pushed it enough, but I will make sure we make mention of it. Watching and participating in not just donating to the charity, but participating in the chat, participating as the show goes on, you will have an ability to affect what goes on in the game. From some of the milestones that we've set up to, giving our guild members a free level, free credit for the sessions, all the little things that we're trying to do to get our guild engaged. We want them to help us get, and you people are listening, help us get more people and eyes on this to just make it a better event for everybody.
I think something I really want to highlight to our regular listeners or to anyone who's just tuning in now is, well, normally we have a very structured flow of show notes, and don't get me wrong, we have our show notes for the full on topic we'll be digging into. But the reason we wanted to just kind of open up this episode in particular with talking about this is, one, it tangentially relates because, spoiler alert, our episode today is about another special event we just planned and ran, but also because genuinely we took a moment as we were talking in our pre-show just thinking about all the effort we've put into this. And in some ways it kind of reflects, I think, a lot of what we do, why we do what we do here at the Vanguard. Small part of it is, I mean, it's a lot of fun. Like,
Yeah.
you and I are on the internet talking about D&D, and then we're also running D&D games. This is the most consistent on time group of players I've ever had. But also, I mean, I think any nerd who's listening to this, any nerd who's not listening to this, very much knows and understands just the sense of community that comes from being in hobbies like this. And I, I mean, I don't think anyone can blame us for when to talk about such a great opportunity we are having to give back through our community and to our community.
Yeah, 100%. I think as we built all this over time, and we have honestly haven't really been at it that long. I mean, it's only been 18 months, but I think building this community and what we've seen from our community and the response from our efforts and to give them the best game possible just encourages us and really makes us want to do more with this. I'm inspired by their community support that we've gotten so far, and that I hope it continues to grow. Really, I mean that's what we do this for.
And also, we hope you guys enjoy it too. We're not kidding when we say you should check out the test streams. Now, granted, they are test streams, and we call them that because they definitely have their fair share of technical difficulties. But at this point, assuming you're watching this before the actual live show, I think if you watch either one, even with some of the rough audio issues we've had and some of the camera stuff we were tweaking out, you'll very much see what we're going for. I know Ryan has been working really hard
Yeah,
to get us various graphics to have on the screen. On the screen, Sean, you've been going crazy with the production of getting the camera set up. I know trying to get our audio issue set up, and there's a dramatic jump from our first test stream to the second.
yeah,
All of these have been various issues to solve. We've been working at actually planning and coordinating the stories for this accelerated set, and coordinating all the efforts with our different DMs, and making sure that even though we bring it every single month with the Vanguard, especially since we have people paying to play these games, which, as a reminder, normally when we do our campaigns from month to month, we don't charge anyone. This is all, volunteer stuff
right.
for fun. But since people are paying to give money to these kids and to the by playing a game with us, we're also trying to be sure that these games we run, both the ones that will be on the stream and the ones that will not be on the stream, will be some kick-ass games of Dungeons and Dragons
Yeah,
and other TTRPGs as well.
absolutely. That's the effort and the plan here is to make sure we know that we put a lot of effort into our free games because we love it. We're very passionate about the game, and we know our passion helps raise money for kids. That just makes it, a win-win for us. But now that we know we're charging for these games, and it makes us even more cognizant of trying to make sure we deliver to the highest standard possible that we can do, just as our passion will let us. And it's going to be a challenge, but I think, with the support that we've been getting and encouragement we're getting, I know it's going to be a great show. And uh, I can't wait to just see how these games develop, because I know, Nathan, you're working really hard with the other DMs to coordinate so that there's a connected feel, there's a connected sense of this, much like our regular uh, monthly sessions. There's a connectivity that we're very, very cognizant and very, very mindful to be to put out there.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing this for barely a year and a half now, and I mean, just what we have managed to accomplish so far, and some of the connections that we have been forming, not just with our community of players, but some of the community of just people in Delaware, to even, I think, across the pond.
Mhm.
I think honestly at this point, I want to give a couple thank yous. Again, we'll get to our regular flow in just a moment, but thank you to the Days and Nights for hosting us and
Yeah.
going with us on this crazy endeavor. Of course, always thank you to Timothy's and Newark for hosting our monthly games. Thank you to all of our volunteers among our players who've been coming out to help. Thank you to, oh my God, SyntheticOak, who I think we'll link below,
Mhm.
on Etsy, who provided the graphics package that we've been using and in some cases tweaking, and has been offering some of that to us pro bono.
Mhm.
Please check out their stuff. Again, if you watch the test streams, you'll see immediately what we're going for, and we couldn't have done that without his help. This has been such a cool project, and honestly, before we transition to the event we just ran and talking about that, um, this is just, you're catching us in the middle as we talk about the past, the very recent past. You're also catching us in the middle of planning for the immediate future, and it just goes to show, we're proud to show what we're doing, and I think it goes to show, I think, what anyone is able to accomplish in their own personal communities. Because I mean, Ryan and I say this all the time. I know we say it with you too. We said it a lot at our test stream on Sunday. Dude, the number of times we're like, what are we doing? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, I had that thought. I mean, I've mentioned it before on the show that I have a background in television production, and I have a background. I work. That's what I do for a living, is a lot of television production. So for me, this is kind of just, I'm gonna say old hat, but I kind of understand the workflow and what has to kind of go into it. But I also started to realize, especially yesterday, when we were recording it, is that, wow, this is a lot of work. Wow, this is a lot of effort. I hope the benefit, I do think it will be, in the end, if we pull this off the way I think we can. I, I already think we've won. I really do. I already think we've established ourselves as something that really cares about this, and we've already won by being able to just do this and getting the support from the community that we have. Days of Nights, Golden Alchemy Crafts, Misty Mountain, Tummy Tea, which is a new sponsor that's jumped on board. Who's going to help us with our new
Oh
T-shirt
my God.
printing? Yeah, that's a new thing. All these little partnerships that we've made over the last year and a half are starting to come to fruition in a major way, which is just a benefit for our players and those, all of you that are watching and listening on Spotify and iHeart and here on YouTube. That it works. We're
Yeah.
accomplishing it.
I gotta say, genuinely, it's still crazy to me thinking how all this started. Like, for me, like, in my involvement, all this started was, I had some free time and thought, yeah, sure, I'll run a D&D game at some bar near where I'm living. And then I every single time we engage with this, I just get so caught up in, again, like, what the hell are we doing, man? What the hell are we doing?
Yeah, that's a this is a good segue time. We'll segue into, we. I even said this to myself. It's like I come up with a lot of kind of crazy ideas to establish what we can do and grow and build this. And this is the topic we're going to talk about. Is Nathan himself, is when you suggested we should do this kind of interesting way, and I think we should get into the topic. Uh,
Yeah.
what we're really talking about today. So.
Yeah, so why don't we dig in? So, on the subject of special events, anyone who's looking at the title of this episode is probably wondering, what the hell is the Night of Falling Stars? So, again, we'll be a little bit off the cuff. We have our notes for reference here, but this is largely going to be a discussion episode because we want to talk to you guys about I mean, how we pulled this together. What
Right.
I think was a really Probably one of my most memorable nights of just playing D&D period,
Right.
for actually a couple reasons in particular, but also just was such a cool thing to organize. So, to our listeners, obviously y'all know at this point, right? We host our monthly games every month. All our players come, they play a series of interconnected one shots. Meaning if you show up and just play one game, cool, you played the one game and that's it. You can go home, no commitment. But if you really want to engage the story, you come back month after month and continue to level up the same character, all of and writing reports and dispatches back for inspiration to continue to engage and get that campaign feel, but without really needing the campaign level commitment. And a story that we have been pitching and posing for a while is that our guild, the Vanguard, has been trying to track down a spear known as Neuraxis the Mage Killer, and they are trying to stop it from falling into the hands of a group of individuals who want to purge magic from the world called the Mono Material.
Yeah, we established, and it took us a while, and it was phase 1, phase 2 of this entire story arc was to build up this adversary, make them mysterious, and then give them a name, and then now we're building them up over time. And then Nathan came up with this idea, and it was amazing. I remember sitting in our DM meeting, and when you said it, we all just started mulling over on how this could be. It's like, what would happen if we decided to start telling stories from the opposite point of view?
Yeah, so we had so what this culminated in was the saying for the monomaterial is they want to take the stars to the earth. That's their slogan. And so the idea we had for the Night of Falling Stars was, what if we run a special event session where our players don't play as the Vanguard fighting the monomaterial, they play the monomaterial opposing the Vanguard for one special night only.
Yeah, and when you said that, we all kind of went, "Oh, that is a very how." And then after we all kind of settled down from how cool we thought this idea was, we all went, "All right, now how do we pull it off? Like, how does this happen? Like, where do we go from here?" And the ideas came out of everybody. All of our DMs, all of our great DMs have thrown in a ton of ideas. We had to sift through a lot of this and figure out what would actually work.
Yeah, which was kind of the point too. So it came from a couple different ideas. There's a lot that went into it. So first and foremost, we had I saw in the Discord we have we have a Discord, a community Discord for people who are not regulars, where we organize a lot of our thoughts and a lot of our ideas and both engage with our community, our players, but also as we have discovered among some of our Sean and myself and Ryan and a couple of our other regular DMs, we actually are not just community engaging with the players, but we're community engaging with the DMs as well too.
Right.
Because now we have a much more rotating crew of DMs, which causes a bit of challenges that we'll bring up in a moment.
Yeah,
But
I
within
will
that
say this. I will say this. That was a big thing too. That was we started to grow, and as it has been growing, our DM pool got deeper, and we had to kind of take a step back and go: Are we diluting our narrative? Are we letting our DMs run? And we at first that was a lot of it too. I wanted to feel out like these new guys, like
hmm
the new people that have joined our guild from DM's perspective. What were they going to bring to the table? And sometimes that can get a little destructive. We've always like, don't give me the bomb in your adventure that's just going to go off in my adventure. I need to know that, so that I think that was like my first, like, okay, we got to kind of not control the narrative, but at least realize that we don't want to dilute it too far, because then our players will start losing sight of the overall narrative that we've been working so hard to put together.
Yeah. Yeah, and an example of how it can work when executed well, which by the way, active listeners will recognize that we've talked about some of these challenges in our earlier episodes too, especially the really early ones where we're talking about our
Hmm.
first planning.
Hmm.
And these are all growing pains, and in some cases things that we're still solving and rooting out as we go. Like this is, we're doing a podcast about it, telling you guys our success, but we're still learning. We're still learning a lot as we go through this process.
Absolutely. This road wasn't paved. We've been paving it. I use this equation. I've said this before. This whole thing is a train, and sometimes it feels like we're putting the tracks down while the train's coming at us, and it's still moving, and it's a moving target, and we have to be adaptable, and we have to seek, controls that help us get better at this. And but we're not. We're just two nerds who like D&D, who like talking about it. You know, we're filling out our own professional style and our own way of doing this over time.
Engaging with a group of additionally creative nerds
Yeah.
too, and some of them are where some of these ideas came from. So one thing we've also experimented with this, again, longtime listeners will remember an issue we had when designing the monomaterial was when you have an adversarial group that doesn't use magic or hates magic, that significantly limits the number of challenges you can oppose
Right.
the your players with. And one thing we looked into, an idea I'd come up with, was the idea of the penitent,
Mhm.
which is effectively, what if you had the monomaterial? Some people might think this is hypocritical. That is the point. Saying, well, I don't want to dirty myself with magic, so I'm going to take mages, willing or unwilling, and I'm going to have them use magic against my enemies, right? So as long as, hey, you already dirtied your hands with magic, so I'm going to use you to keep your hands dirty, so that way I get the benefits of magic being used in my army and in my ranks without me actually touching it. And
Right.
as a result, I still stay clean. Again, if you think there are holes in that logic, that is the point.
I also
um,
think too the challenge in creating this type of adversaries, you got to realize they're the bad guys. When you passionately get into them, you want them to be successful, but not too successful. They got to have flaws. They got to have quirks because they're gonna. If they win, we lose.
Precisely. So the cool thing was Mike, one of our DMs, actually posted an awesome speech, like a mantra for the penitent, where he started to talk about what their ideas were, or talking about how, I am worthless,
Hmm.
I am lowly, I don't deserve anything, really leaning into the ideas that I had put forth. And I read that, and Ryan had thrown in the chat, I think, this is making me say, screw the Vanguard, I want to join the monomaterial. And then I took that idea, and then I started doing a little bit of thinking, because I had seen also like an Instagram reel from some creator posing an idea of, what if you had a session where players, show up late in the session, and the session begins with them playing as villagers and having to
Right.
defend themselves against another attack. And
Right.
so the idea of presenting players with an alternate character sheet to their own to start off a session, just to mix things up. And all these ideas just kind of came together in a bit of a soup. And I responded to this thing. I said, not for nothing, idea for an event. What if we had the players play as the monomaterial?
Right.
And gave them character sheets. And then I started going from there of like, think about it, guys. Imagine a session where you have no spellcasters, no clerics, no nothing. They're all fighters or rogues, because since they're playing monomaterial, I can give them character sheets, and I know what's on your sheet, buddy. So you're
Right.
not surprising me.
Right.
And then, like a video game designer who designed special moves to your character, I know what you're capable of, and now I can design the encounter around that. And the ideas started to flow from there.
Yeah, that was really clever. There were so many different ways to approach this, but when we started to think about reskinning, alternate characters, how we're going to present this to our players, here's the first thing. I think a very important point to when you're building in your community and you're trying to grow your community and present things to them be fun. Just because it's cool to you doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be cool to them. And we were so excited and so passionate about what we were going to do. We'll talk about this a bit more as we get into the planning of, as we get into the
Mm-hmm.
execution of this plan. Is that our players felt some trepidation that we did not anticipate on, and so then we had to start to figure out, okay, well, that wasn't a concern I thought would be there, and now we had to adapt to it.
Yeah, in the initial moment, as we were talking about it, just as DMs, and kind of chewing through this idea, I mean, I know, even I'll speak selfishly and I'll say it, like, my idea came from the perspective of a DM, just straight up. Because, right, I mean, that's part of why I first started doing this and joining, was because it was a creative outlet for me as a DM to try something new, to design new scenarios, to play with monsters and stat blocks I never used before.
Right.
And like, to me, this was such a cool, like, oh, the players will love it because something unique, it's different, it's something they've never tried before. And also, as a DM, like, that was the other part too, is we can cut loose, right? Because I
Right.
can give them higher level player sheets, so thus I can use monster. I think our highest level player is level 7.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now with this event, I ran level 10s,
Right. Right.
just to spoil that right there. So I got to go into a different section of the monster manual
Right.
and pull out new tricks. Actually, it's not true. I homebrewed. Actually, I didn't use the monster manual, but I had to homebrew and mix a few things. But the point is, like, I got to bring some stuff. And that was the other benefit too. If I kill them, it's not the regular characters, so it's kind of consequence free.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. Is there's an opportunity, like, you could really go after a character in a way. Not that we don't, we I think our encounters are trying to be fair. All of our DMs try to balance them to make them as fair and challenging and fun for the players as possible. But I do think we all have that. We've only had a couple character deaths in our entire arc, and
Mhm.
they're weighty, and we all think about it and like, do we go after our players to the point of trying to kill them? And in this sense, you could go all out because who doesn't like a glorious death?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we really put a lot of thought into just the how we could have our players engaging with the story in this, specifically both in the ways that getting to see almost like a cutscene,
Hmm.
right? Getting to see things from the villain's perspective, and then in later sessions being able to have our DMs now run the Vanguard dealing with the ramifications of what our players did on this night.
Hmm.
Like that, immediately your mind starts to explode with the different ideas. And plus, I mean, I was excited for the reveal, right?
Right.
For that moment where we don't we make all our I told everyone, I said, make all your previews for the sessions vague. Keep them kind of generic, don't really reveal what's going on. Get maybe a hint so that way it seems like, oh yeah, this is the Vanguard quest, but then for us to be there and have that big like this was one of the first things we coordinated with the DMs was to have this idea of instead of us say our usual, which is, we all give previews of the sessions we're running tonight, and then we say, all right, let's roll some dice. But to have all the DMs in unison say, and let's take the stars to the earth,
Right.
hit that villain phrase, and all the players like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
I think the reason for our excitement should be very evident at this point.
Yeah, it was. I know I was excited and I took a slightly different approach to my one shot, and we'll get into that. Both of what we ran that night, and I think they were uniquely different. But yes, we were extremely nervous about uh, presenting this to our players in a way that was going to make them excited to do it. We weren't really sure how it would turn out. It is one of those things that we thought it would be a great idea taken solely from a DM's perspective. I don't play very much, so I do at times. I will, talk to our community, and I'll talk to you as well as Ryan on an idea. Does this work? Because I, I tend to take things from a DM's perspective and a little less from a player's perspective.
Oh, I take things 100% from a DM perspective. I never play,
Right.
aside from on the test stream, which again you can watch it on our YouTube channel at Vanguard Guild D&D, or on the Twitch stream at twitch.tv/Vanguard Guild D&D.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, even pitching it to the DMs was a I don't want to say a challenge, but was something that we had to coordinate. In fact, actually, why don't we talk more specifically about some of the planning and the challenges that went into setting this up? I say coordinating because, again, as you mentioned earlier, one of the main things that we do with this process is we're always having to make sure that our DMs are we never. A big important thing for me is don't want to feel constrained like I have to tell someone else's story, right?
Right.
I never run pre-written adventures. I keep saying I will one of these days just because maybe it'll make things easier for me. But to me, the reason I love DMing so much is I love the creative expression of it. And so a challenge we always have out the gate is making sure our DMs that we bring into the fold are understanding of the stories and the direction we want to push the overall narrative
Mhm.
without impeding too much on the kinds of games and stories they're telling. Right? We want them to feel free to run their games at their tables as a part of our setting and narrative. I think that's part of what makes this also different from like a West Marches style game.
Yeah, definitely. We as DMs and story and creative writers and our involvement in this story, we really just want the new DMs and the new creative people that are helping us tell this story to kind of tell it within our context because we have laid so much groundwork and there's a bevy of stories to be pulled from just the little nuggets that you can drop here and there. And we've proven that from earlier episodes, the ledger, how you used it to tie into a bunch of other things and what I think was happening is that as we started to build up, too many of these points were starting to get established at the same time. There's a
Mhm.
repetition to this to get your players to feel like it's a campaign, that it is a connected story. If you lay too much new stuff out, they can get lost.
Which I think also came with the territory of, I mean, when we say we've been planning the Night of Falling Stars for a while. The initial message I think was sent at the end of March.
Yeah.
So we were just coming up on our 1 year anniversary
Mhm.
for actually doing the Vanguard.
Mhm.
We at the time still, um, even then compared to now, let alone compared to a year ago, we've had more DMs who joined, such that it wasn't like it was back in the day when, right, it was you, me, Mike, Brian, like it was a couple core people who
Mhm.
were the only DMs, and so thus we all met at the table. We were all telling the same story. We're all connected together. Now we have a rotating crew of DMs. Like we have our regulars. Like I run every night. You run every night. But now it's not always the same DMs at every single table,
Mhm.
and so now, right, you don't have that direct planning of, oh, okay, I know I'm running for the next 5 games, so I can set the seeds from game to game to game.
Right.
And on top of that, as they're bringing in, they have their own ideas. They're excited. They want to run their stuff. So they're also trying to build onto this story, which again, cool. But when you're interjecting that inconsistency too, right? It You kind of need to try to find ways to again get everyone lining together so we still have that connectivity that makes the Vanguard so popular with our players.
Yeah, one of the things that it got established early with us, is because there was less of it, was easier to feel connected to our individuals. Our individual one shots felt more connected to the other one shots. And a lot of that is because we were very diligent about reiterating themes and reiterating processes. And when we started to add more people, I think some of that got lost. Some of that got a little diluted. And I've used that word a few times, but in that we were all just trying to keep players happy and keep players playing and engaged, that and trying to play the games we wanted. We lost a little communication between ourselves and had to, I feel like, reel it back in and start to feel more connected. We didn't give those new DMs the same kind of background information that we all got as we built this.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And all of this coordination, especially for this idea, was so important because again, it wasn't just that we wanted to, like, oh, we'll just make new character sheets tonight, right?
Right.
It wasn't just like, oh, you're playing as the bad guys. Like we wanted this to feel like a special event. We wanted this to feel like I love going to the Vanguard every month, but oh my god, the Night of Falling Stars was crazy.
Right.
Like, and that's part of why I pitched it as well for us to run in October, partially because it gave us months to prep, but also because, like, yeah, it's spooky season.
Right.
We
Right.
play as the bad guys. Like, we get to dwell on this a little bit. And that's, I mean, well, I started my prep months in advance too, just because that Instagram reel idea, I ran that as a session.
Right. Right.
So again, to reiterate, I had seen a reel which was basically, what if you had a session? By the way, highly encourage this with anyone with any DM.
Yeah, this is fun.
But what if you run a session where your players start the session as villagers in a town that is under siege? And then, they do the best to survive with really crappy player sheets. Maybe those sheets are so minimalistic that you don't expect the players to live. I certainly didn't. And then at the end of the session, their heroes heroically show up and save the day, at which point they switch back to their regular player sheets. I ran this. We had been talking prior to the idea about, hey, does anyone want to try this? But then I also ran that scenario using the monomaterial attacking a village, partially to set up my story, but also to see how our players would respond to giving them not their normal character sheets at the start of a session.
Yeah, that I knew would be a challenge. You're not really sure. Some people spend a lot of time and get into their characters and have developed them and really starting to understand what they can do. And then you're like, oh yeah, by the way, you can throw all out the window. Here's something new. That was
Yep.
scary. I will say that was very scary to attempt.
Scary for you. I ran it.
Yeah. I also think
But
communication is important. If you can communicate what your thought is and your idea, that helps your players go, oh, okay, I see what we're doing and buy into it.
well, actually, I'm glad you bring that up too, because, well, I mean, the thing is, Sean, I'm using a sarcastic tone. What I'm about to say is not sarcastic, but the implication is all of my players, the feedback I got from that session I ran was they had a blast. Like they thought it
Right.
was really cool, especially because I opened the session saying, huh, "I'm confident one of you is dying tonight," because I think none of them had more than 12 HP. I don't want to talk about it, but suffice to say, they survived. They had a great time. All those players loved it, and naturally, my focus group of 6 people, 6 of them loved it, 100%. So clearly, this idea was flawless, and everyone was going to love it and enjoy it.
Yeah, that didn't quite turn well, I think everybody really enjoyed the execution of the Night of Falling Stars. I think it went very, very well, but our trepidation this is something too that we always do. Our community is extremely important to us. Our players are extremely important to us. So that if we feel like we're going to completely flip the apple cart and make everybody hate what we're doing, we had to kind of to certain players, I made sure we just, all right, this is what we're doing. It's not worth stressing over.
Yeah, well, specifically because they reacted to us. So we
Yeah.
because we one thing I hope people get from listening to us talk about our community, aside from the fact that I try and kill them a lot, is we work really hard to build trust with our community members
Right.
and make it such that they trust us to run the best games as openly and honestly as we can.
Right.
And we had started teasing Night of Falling Stars for about a month,
Mhm.
and we were like, all right, cool, this is building up. And one of our players had reached out and because they had heard about the villager session and they knew we were building something and they knew that it was going to be something unique and different,
Right.
and they got the sense that, oh, Night of Falling Stars, the unique thing will be that we're going to give everybody new player sheets,
Right.
which was the main thing. The other thing we had toyed with was maybe you bring your own character,
Right.
but we're going to scratch the name off, and effectively you're just going to play the same sheet, but a different character name. And
Which
it was one
which
of our
is what
most.
happened in my game. A lot of my players just renamed their old characters, which is fine. Alter ego. I was totally fine with that.
Yeah, and we ran some like that. But we also had to run a different style because one of our like most engaged players, like actively writing a dispatch every time, actively engaged in our Discord, has a memorable character that is with everybody, reached out to us and was like, "Hey, I think you guys are planning this. Are you? Because if so, I have some concerns." And we sat and we talked with him, and it turns out like the player that if you had asked me who would love what we did, I would have said easily. It seemed like he was going to hate what we were going to run. Just
To the point of not showing up. We had another player say similar that was like, I don't want to. I'm thinking about not coming because I don't. This is the thing that made me laugh. The thoughts that our players thought what we were going to do, that just their just thought process from total TPK. Like we would actually plan a night where we would come in and kill everyone. A lot of people didn't know what we were going to do. Our vagueness really built up some tension and build up some, anticipation in a good way, but also trepidation. There's a lot,
yeah, some of it good, but
no,
not all of
not
it.
all of it. Yeah. That definitely was an eye opener because again, what we think is great and what we think is interesting may not always be fun. And I did pivot. I had a thought
Yeah.
process going into it, and after talking to some players and letting some of them know, like, all right, your concerns are valid. I want to listen to them. I don't want you to play in a game you're not going to like. And that made me completely. We're going to get into our games and what we ran, but I I flipped and I rewrote in like 2 days. I took my idea, threw it out the window, and rewrote it so it made way more sense and was a lot more fun for my players, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan and I actually with this particular player sat down and had a long conversation, probably at least 20, 25, 30 minutes,
Mhm.
just on Discord one day because we both were like, oh crap. I'm like, hopped in like, hey, you got him in the chat. And in getting their full concerns, I it was a good learning experience
Yeah.
because not that we wouldn't have listened to him and been like, hey, well, I mean, he's one of our favorite players, so I would say screw you, man, but uh, that's because he's killed way too many of my stuff way too quick. But it was really eye-opening, and honestly it stood out to me because there's a game design principle that I've taken in before that I've known and I was caught off guard that I was missing, which is we had planned something really unique, really interesting, really surprising for our players.
Yeah.
But as great as all of that sounds, What I didn't say is fun.
Yeah.
And that's because even though interesting, unique, surprising, all of these things can be fun,
Right.
they are not synonymous with fun. And in this case, our chance at taking a chance at being really experimental, and like you said earlier, swinging for the fences, which, hey, that's how you get great stuff. It was a risk, and if we had gone on blindly and just said, oh, they'll get over it, or oh no, they'll like it totally, we would have stood to do at least some damage to our player base, because I think we would have been so caught up in the moment of how great our ideas were, that then we would have overlooked some genuinely some concerns, that just as to why that style would not have gelled with them.
Yeah, you nailed it right there, that we had to a certain degree, check our ego, back up a bit, and realize that, yes, we think this is a great idea. Like, how would you not like this, was kind of our approach at times. But when one of our most engaged players has that type of a concern, it was a great backpedal for us. And again, we adapt. Our community is important, so we're not afraid to pivot on an idea if we think we start to believe that idea isn't going to be valid, or it's not going to be fun, or not going to be enjoyable. We have to, pivot. That's smart on our end. But yeah, I think our players, we always want them to play in our games, which is part of the reason why we never really reveal who's writing what game, because
Hmm.
people have a tendency to nail. We have all great DMs, so you're always gonna have a great game. But we didn't want people to gravitate to one DM or another, month to month to month to month. We wanted to have all of our players engaged with all of our DMs across the
Hmm.
board, and it's always going to be a challenge. But that was part of this trepidation that we were going into this, was that, we could, man, we could ruin all the trust that we have built up to this point.
Yeah, yeah, like that,
Yeah.
because I mean that trust is hard to build, man.
Yeah. It took us a
And
while.
it's like any DM, I think, has had this conversation when they talk to someone who doesn't understand D&D, right? Any DM has had this chat where they're like, okay, well, okay, so it's the question of how do you win, and also when you describe how you can spawn control the bad guys, and they're like, well, wait a minute, if you control all the bad guys, and then I feel and I say, yeah, what's to stop me from just killing you outright and saying 30 dragons show up and roast you? Is because then you don't have a good time.
Right.
And if you don't have a good time, you don't play.
Mhm.
And if no one wants to play with me because I don't give them a good time, then I don't have a game to play anymore. And so now I'm just writing my fanfic by myself. I'm not playing D&D anymore.
Right, it just becomes a self-imposed novel.
It's like you said earlier, it's and that's why you need to check your ego at the door, right?
Mhm.
That's why, right? It's that my precious DM syndrome, right? Oh, this is my idea. Like, oh, I worked on it really hard, and like you did. Like you
Right,
did. You worked really hard on it, and dog, it was cool. You had some cool ideas. But again, just because it's cool to you doesn't mean it's fun for your
right,
players, and that's okay.
right,
And actually, honestly, the other cool thing is, because of his complaints, we had an even more varied night too.
right.
It was totally the curb cutting effect, which I think we've talked about before.
Yeah, we talked about a
Because
bit in the last episode how one small change becomes beneficial to a larger group, even though that change wasn't targeted for the larger group, and I think
yeah,
that's important.
we added another option. Some of our DMs ran games where we encourage player. We said, hey, this will be the level their game will be run at.
Mhm.
So if you want to play at this table, make a character sheet.
Yeah.
And I tell you, this player made a character sheet. They totally not the type of character they run
Mhm.
normally from month to month. It gave them a chance to try something entirely different. They had a little more control in it, which was all they really
Yeah.
wanted, I think. And they had a blast. I've been reading in the Discord, and like, God, I'm so glad they weren't at my table. Oh my God.
Well, yeah, and we've made comments to this point too, and when we're trying out this new thing, we definitely have to be aware of the fact that it is not DMs versus the players. It is a collective conversation that we are all having together, that if we come up with a great idea and you yes and that idea, it becomes a bigger and better thing. And that was, I knew that this was going to be a challenge going into it, but I think, one, we executed it really well based on the fact that we listened to our players and listened to the feedback we got.
That execution started great, by
Mhm.
the way. if you don't mind me, like, y'all want to know how good the execution was when we started the Night of Falling Stars? Here's how good it was. It started with me taking my shirt off, and all in all, everyone had a good time. Like,
Yeah. I think everybody had a blast. I had a blast, even though I had to kind of pivot quickly and revamp my story concept. It still went out really well, and I thought it was well received.
yeah, I should probably clarify for anyone who's wondering at this point what show they're listening to. So specifically, I had printed a t-shirt with the monomaterial logo in the corner. So I had our Vanguard t-shirts on top, which I believe if we'll put the links up so that you can order them if you want. Proceeds
Yeah,
go to charity.
yeah,
But I had printed a separate monomaterial t-shirt, which is a small little logo on there. So I wore it underneath my Vanguard t-shirt. So we started off the night kicking it over after we talked about tabletop for chop and all the big events we had coming up. And then I said, who's here for Vanguard Unite? And they were like, woo, yeah. And then I said, well, you're in the wrong place. And so I pulled off the Vanguard shirt, tossed it out. And normally we talk in the beginning, role playing a bit as the elders of the Vanguard. And I came out as head of monomaterial, head of research and
yeah. That
destabilization,
was really good.
Bravis Procor. And then gave the pitch, told them they were playing villains, and I watching the eyes around the group go like, oh, as they all realized what the plot twist was of the night that we've been teasing. My God, it was so much fun.
Yeah, that was fun. I think I watched that too as you were going through your speech and watching the players start to realize, no, we're not out to kill you. We're not going for a global TPK here. We are just trying to have some fun. And I knew that we were asking for some trust, and I think we pulled it off. And I think this allows us to write and experiment with more ideas like this to engage our players and have them really find that the Vanguard is a memorable experience.
Yeah, and just yet again, as we're now talking about the execution and how the actual night goes, all of this ties together too, because like that element of trust, even extended to, I'm sure there are some veteran DMs who are hearing us talking about how, oh, you took a bunch of people, some new players, some not, and put them all in an evil game. Oh God, that sounds like a potential for a really potentially problematic night for at least a couple people. And again, we started this night as well. I said in the speech in the communication, like, and talking to the DMs as well. We started it off by having that quick conversation saying, like, yeah, you guys are playing the bad guys. Now, for the record, you're all playing bad, different levels of bad. So whether you are part of the monomaterial because you're just here for a paycheck, or you are devoted and to the cause and hate magic, if you are a penitent because you were kidnapped, or you're a penitent because you are devoted, how you guys carry yourselves on these missions is up to you. Obviously be respectful of everybody else at your table, and luckily we can trust our community with that. But again, we set that tone also right at the very beginning, so that way people could be excited about the night they were about to have, but also without worrying about, like, okay, cool, how evil is tonight about to get? There are kids in the room, like, oh God.
Right. Well, yeah, I thought that was going to be a challenge too, and I will honestly say that the few players that I had talked to leading up into that made me want to pivot on my storyline is I realized that some people just it's not their nature to play evil characters. It's not their nature to run in an evil game,
Mhm.
and I putting players in that situation when they don't want to do it is a recipe for disaster. So, we can get into my story a bit here if you want.
Actually, no, I was just thinking that it's
Uh,
got,
and
it's like we're
so
in sync.
yeah, so and I like we're talking on the same channels. It's pretty wild. I I decided to pivot a bit and kind of tell my story from within as these members of the monomaterial, these characters that joined for various reasons, but got disillusioned really fast and realized that this is not what I thought it was going to be. And
Yeah, and when you were talking beforehand about what you were planning on doing, so Sean ran a session with an entire, like, totally, you took the idea I had, the initial purpose, and put your own creative spin on it as far as what kind of story to tell. And when you first dropped it in the Discord, I was like, "Oh, that's brilliant! Oh, that's so cool!"
well, I appreciate that because it was a fun idea, and I wanted to kind of spin off the idea that these guys are like the Underground Railroad. So during the day, they keep a very low profile. They blend in with the monomaterial, but because they tried to escape and got captured and brought back, and the mono material doesn't like you to leave once you've joined, they realized that if as adventurers they couldn't get out, what chance did any of the common or the non-adventurer people in within the monomaterial society have if they wanted to, if they found out they could use magic, or they found out they had some magical inclination and the monomaterial wouldn't like them very much, how would they get out? And that's what this group decided. I made this group do, is that this party was now helping people escape the monomaterial and kind of made them still feel like good heroic adventurers and not necessarily the evil bad guys.
And you did it through also a really cool narrative hook that I understand at least one player who avidly reads our wiki
Yeah.
at vanguardguild.fandom.com.
Yeah.
But one of our players caught on to, and I understand they also were like, when they realized what you were doing,
Right.
tell about it, Sean. Tell
Okay.
them.
So yeah, the what I decided to do is almost kind of like, and I equate it to a little bit of Rogue One, is I wanted to kind of retell a story that I had already done. The session that I ran called the Obsidian Caldera, that
So
that
cool.
had such a plot line where the monomaterial, the Vanguard ran into a member of the monomaterial as a child who had experienced a bit of a trauma. So they recognized that who he was from the monomaterial, and that at some point in that story, this is the Obsidian Caldera, that he could use magic and he had to be protected. And while they were facing off the big bad guy from the Obsidian Caldera, Cinder, the monomaterial search party shows up, and the father and the son are reunited. So I decided within this story, The Night of Falling Stars, to tell the story from the father's point of view. So now we get to see how the father organized the search party, got the search party together, had them go out and save and find his son, and intervene, and then kind of wedge in how those two stories ended up. And I thought it was fun. And when I did start to see them pick up on the ideas that they knew what we were talking about, their impact was so much more fun. It really was.
And I gotta say, I mean, like, it is exactly the kind of thing. The only reason I don't want to say it's what I was thinking of is because I didn't think of this. But in terms of giving you as a DM the creative space to just say, "Hey, here's the twist. They're playing as the bad guy." Nobody else had the thought to run a session that was the opposite perspective of a previously run session.
Right.
None of us had that idea.
Right.
Or if they did, they didn't post it in the Discord and they did something different. No one had that idea. And instead, it like, because a couple people had the idea of like, hey, you might fight the Vanguard,
Right.
right? But to do this, like, this time twist on it
Mhm.
of seeing the other side, right? The Avengers moment, the Endgame moment, that's America's ass, right? Having that bit of seeing what was going on, I think is just, it also gives another humanizing look at the monomaterial as people, because we actually got to see their perspective on an event that we had already seen.
Yeah, especially because in the end of the Obsidian Caldera, when the Vanguard shows, or the monomaterial search party shows up, the Vanguard is fighting the big bad guy. They aid because the big bad guy was way outside their CR. I made him super powerful so that the search party would have to help them. So the Obsidian Caldera, they both defeat Cinder and then have to square off and look at each other like, all right, we're done fighting today. We've taken it up. We'll all agree. And within the Obsidian Caldera story, I planted the seed that the father was going to go now look for his son's friend who was taken away by the monomaterial to one of the re-education camps. So that plot lead now got to me tied by telling this story on The Night of the Falling Stars. I got to kind of really kind of fill that out. And here's something that's always fun in stories as DMs and as characters, and we write these stories, we tend to take it from the heroic or the one side point of view.
Right.
And you never really know within a story the machinations that happen with the bad guy. Like when you watch a story, when you watch a movie, they'll show you what's going on with the bad guy side. And you as a viewer get to see it. And then you're watching, oh, now we're going back to the hero, but the hero doesn't know what I just saw. Do you find what I mean?
Right.
So now I
Right.
was able to kind of
Exactly.
wedge that stuff in. Now they all knew what the heroic side was going to do, but they didn't know how they got there. And those little side machinations added depth and added some fun to that story. It made it engaging, I think.
Since you were retelling, an encounter that had already happened, how exactly did you handle the ending, like the killing
Well,
blow to the thing.
that was kind of fun because I knew, as we were going, like, I'm looking at we all watch our time and we all, try to make sure
Right.
these wrap up at a certain amount, and I'm watching the time and I'm like, "Okay, I have a beautiful mechanism for getting this fight over when I wanted it to because I already knew what the other side was doing and had already done." So, when we got down to it, as the clock started to tick, and I'm like, "Okay, Cinder has X number of hit points left," and I knew we were getting there. And so when I believe Cherish was the character that did the killing blow with her Vorpal sword or whatever, I said, "How'd you do it?" She was like, "Take its head off." So then I just tied it into the how it actually ended from the front side story. So where Bull and Bright
Wow.
Roar, the dwarf, makes his killing blow at the exact same time. So that when Cherish took out Cindermaw in this one, not say Cherish, I think it was a different named character, but the player,
Mhm.
Donna, who plays Cherish, took out Cindermaw. The last thing they see is the dwarf standing where he was standing when he thought he took out Cindermaw. So there's two pieces ended up so that hopefully I'll get a good dispatch from it that'll tie that together. We can all see those two things happen and see how they meshed. That was fun.
God, that's just I still like seriously kudos. Because I mean, again, no one else had that idea.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wanted to run for, "Ooh, I can make an evil game. I can, amplify and, maybe it wouldn't be a big deal if I, took out these evil players and still make the Vanguard feel somewhat heroic." But I knew that once I knew I was going to write this story, I had written it originally very much as I wanted the players to kind of feel oppressed and pushed and downtrodden, especially the penitents that I would have in my group, so
Mhm.
that they would befriend the father Khalid, and then he would be like their mechanism to get out of the monomaterial. And then as I started to go through that, I'm like, this is not fun. This is the first half of this adventure is going to be boring and a little depressing. And I felt coming out of the gate, this wasn't going to be fun. So I pivoted on that. Said, okay, now it's going to start as they are on a escort mission, escorting someone out of the monomaterial to meet their rendezvous so they can leave and get away. And how do they cover that and put them right into that situation? Made them the Underground Railroad uh, proponents right then, and that's how they started the adventure.
That's good. Well, I had my plans
So what did you
going into
do?
this. Yeah, I had my plans going into this,
Yeah.
but actually my plans changed in like the final month before the
Mhm.
session started. That's not entirely my fault. That's the fault of a special guest who actually I think we should probably bring on now.
Yeah, why don't we bring him on the show?
All right. Well, anyone who's listened to some of our episodes in the past will recognize our producer Ryan. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing great.
I well, people will understand why I needed you on for this. Uh God. So for my session, I seeded this crap months ago. Like even during that villager session, I was prepping it. So for mine, what I came up with was I've had a longtime antagonist who's been popping up here and there by the name of Baron Algaron. The whole bit with him is he's some blowhard who owns a lot of silver mines and thinks he can buy his way into the monomaterial. They don't actually respect him that much. It was part of the idea I had, which is the monomaterial hires a lot of people. Some people are just riding on the coattails, trying to act like they're part of the cause, but they're not really as into it as they think they are. And actually, fun fact: first time he debuted, Ryan, you were at the table that night. First time you played with me. I don't know if you remember that detail.
Oh no, I know. I remember that vividly. There was a
So
it was an interesting table to say the least.
yeah, that was fun. So what I set up was I wrote my vague description for the session being, hey, because for months I'd had every session was trying to catch the Baron as the monomaterial was sending hunters out to get him. And he kept escaping off somewhere because he'd screwed up real bad, used magic, the monomaterial wanted him dead. So for this session, I teased, hey guys, we know where the Baron is. Go get him. This has been going on too long. And from a Vanguard perspective, that's, hey, we've been after the Baron too long. What's up? But so I set this whole session up. No, I gave them pre-sheets, no spellcasters at all, which became a problem. And said, we're going to go hunt down the Baron one last time. They showed up. He found the other reason I wanted to do this, and part of my inspiration for the Night of Falling Stars was they were going to go against the servant of Luke Ko. I think I said that right. It's basically a giant mech suit that's in Tasha's, way too high level for our players, but with pre-made sheets, a fair fight. And then Ryan messaged me.
I'm trying to contain the evil DM laugh inside me.
God bless.
Yeah, so I did, but I want to back it up just a little bit if you don't mind. I want to give a sneak preview into how that session ended, if you don't mind. The first session, the session
Please, please.
when I ran Valestir, for some of you don't know, and I walked in and I was going to have a sheet, and Sean handed me a number of them, and he gave me this Drow Rogue. And I thought, I can make something of this. This is an assassin rogue. I'm feeling it, right? So I ran that, and the last bit, you can read about it on vanguardguild.fandom.com. It was called a defective trap. I remember it distinctly. The last bit of it was as the Baron was riding away. I had a short bow. I took the shot and I hit him. I distinctly remember that. And Nathan ended it with, you hear a grunt of pain, and that's it, as they escaped. And I said, I got him. I know I got him. He was definitely low on health. And Nathan said, nah, that was a body double. So I said, okay.
Next session, I said it was a body double.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, have at it. And
your
so
exact words on Discord were, you naughty DM you.
That's right. I can't believe you pulled that. Nice job. I shouldn't be surprised, but yeah, I did. I said, you naughty DM you. And then when he gave the premise for them, so fast forward, he gives the premise to this one. I said, last time the session ended with Valis and Baron, it was quite contentious. So if you want, and I'm not running a session because I was playing host that night, I could just kind of introduce a third party, Nathan. So
You
take it away from
DM
there.
you.
That's how I introduced the concept. So what did you think of that?
Yeah, so Ryan messaged me and he's like, hey, what do you think of me playing at your table as a player, but I'm not a monomaterial. I'm playing as my character from the Vanguard, Valis Deer, who's now, since when you first created the character, you weren't a DM for us.
Right.
But then now he's become a big named character.
Right.
Level 17, I might add.
Yeah.
And what if you played him undercover on this mission to try and recover the Baron? And I had initially envisioned it like, hey, the players might let the Baron go, or he might escape, and this might continue. But since I didn't think the Vanguard would necessarily want to kill the Baron. They might, depend. You never know how players are. But with the Vanguard, they'd have free license, and they could do what they wanted. But then you suggested being undercover, and oh God, I made the dumb mistake of saying yes.
Yeah, and listen, so just quick context, because we are pushing the end of the episode and we don't want to go on about our personal fan fiction forever. We do want this to be about, planning a special session. There's important key points that we'll kind of get to, but Valestir is an assassination rogue. That's a subclass. He has a charlatan background. I mean, he's built to blend in. Right. That's always been, that was actually the sheet that Sean, you handed me during the initial session. And I'd kept that. The only reason I beefed him up was because of the sheer S-storm that I was walking into when Nathan told me all the things that were going to be thrown at me. And by the way, for those of you listening that were in that session, he didn't tell me half of what he was throwing at us. Right. Because here was the important part, right? Nathan kind of talked about it earlier on in the podcast. It is, we always go, oh, my precious, and we could tell a story. This was not about Nathan telling a story about how Valestir comes in. This was not about Ryan coming in and bumping up his character to level 17 so that he can show off all the amazing stuff he had.
Right.
Not at all.
This was about saying, because I remember when I came to you, Nathan, we said, this has to be carefully controlled, right? And carefully executed, because otherwise it can seem like a railroading rather than that third Spider-Man coming in, right?
Right, right.
It's
Right.
you're all
Like,
pointing in. So talk to us a bit about like when I said, "Hey, this is when," and I gave you the character sheet beforehand, and I said, "You tell me what's on limits, what's off limits." Talk to me about how you balanced it because this was a hard session for you.
I didn't read your character sheet. I just asked for a couple of key details. I didn't read your sheet at all. I did not.
Well, there's a reveal.
So, yeah. Yeah, I know. So
For those of you
so
who are listening, my jaw dropped. It hit the
yeah,
floor.
so for this session, I told the guys this wasn't a bad session. It's not that it wasn't my best session ever. This was the hardest session of D&D I have ever run in my life. And low key, I hope it is the hardest. And part of that was because since I volunteered to create player sheets, I had 6 players at the table, not Ryan, who had 10 level 10 characters that they had never seen before. None of them spellcasters, thank God.
To clarify,
Some of them
sorry, you had 6 level 10s, right? Because it sounded
6
like
level
6
10
level 10s.
characters, and the
Got it.
players had never seen them before.
Got it.
And then the other piece was, as I told Ryan, I was like, this is great. And I told him from the beginning, I was like, I love this idea. I think it's so cool. But you are a DM, one of our regular DMs,
Right.
and I will be treating you like a PC.
Yep.
Anyone who doesn't like those 4 letters together realize we literally are having a DNPC, which anyone who doesn't know that term, maybe you're a rookie DM, is a trope that happens sometimes where a DM basically creates their super special cool character,
Mm-hmm.
basically their player character, and runs them at the table, which creates an imbalance, right? Because, oh, what do you know? The DM's character is a cleric, and every item that comes perfectly fits their build. Isn't that interesting? Like those are the dangers you can have. You can also have as well the players, especially in this instance, because Ryan is going to show up as an opposing party. Oh, what do you know? Ryan's character Valis is stronger than all of yours, and you just happen to lose. But wasn't it cool? Like
Right.
it was something I had to be so careful with.
Right.
And part of the reason I didn't tell you everything that was going on, and we had a bit of a conversation beforehand where I made sure that I understood what your objectives and what your goals as Valis were, was because I wanted to be sure I treated everyone at the table as players as fairly as possible. But I also had to balance that with, because you are a DM and because you had a higher level than them, I had to make sure that not only was I fair to everyone, I had to work extra hard to make sure that the players, the real players, felt like I was being fair to them.
Right. And this goes back to, again, the whole topic is about planning a special session, right?
Mm-hmm.
Planning that special thing. And again, it cannot be about the DMs. It's got to be about the players and how you balance it. And it is a very fine line that you got to walk. Now, with that said, I did say I need a legendary or 2
Mm-hmm.
to survive this because, again, the whole point was Valis was coming in here to try and extricate a high value target because he is the right hand of the shadow hand being the sort of intelligence spy wing of the Vanguard. And his notion would be to finally get this person under our control for interrogation and manipulation. Right? That is what he does. And so it would be a level 17 against 6 level 10s against your servant of Luco, right? Which I don't even know what that CR is at this
It
point.
doesn't have one, but it's a plus 17 to hit, rolling like 3d10s plus 10, I think.
Yep.
Like,
and his goons. And then
Yep.
just let the people know what the fun was that you threw in there.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and then when the armor broke, I added that there was a fun 3D print I'd had of a necrotic elemental that also exploded out afterwards too.
But that
A lot of
was
skeletons.
after something else.
What was
The
wait, what was the other thing
glowing,
I
the
threw?
underglow, and the skeletons that began to appear.
I forgot those weren't the Baron's goons. That was the other thing. Yeah, that's right. I didn't tell you that
Right.
either.
Right. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
it was a number of different conflicting parties, right?
yeah.
And at some point, you have to say in the story, Ryan, you can't act out as a monomaterial agent. You got to, halfway through or quarter of the way through, you got to give yourself up, because
Yep.
otherwise you're acting just as any other player would. And at that point, it's all the things versus you, right?
Yeah.
And
Hi. Go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, and then that's when we realized, or at least I felt, the players took to it. Because what
Oh,
happened when I gave that up? There were some history checks. What happened with that?
well, so that's where there were some amazing highlights. Like, I wish we'd recorded it so everyone could see the dynamic that shifted. Because the other thing too is, so the way I handled Ryan coming to my table as well, we got shady with this too. Was I said to the players beforehand, I was like, "Hey, guys," because Ryan's buzzing around hosting. I said, "Hey guys, Ryan's not, do you guys mind if Ryan hops in? Like, he's not doing anything. Like, join him." They're like, "Oh yeah, sure." So I called Ryan over and I said, "Hey, do you want to play?" He's like, I don't have a character sheet." He did. I was behind my thing.
Right.
I was like, "I've got some." He's like, "Okay, cool. Can you give me them?" And so I took the stack of character sheets, I put his on top, and then I handed it to him, and then he just chose a sheet out of that. But what I neglected to tell Ryan was none of the sheets at the table had magic at all. So what happened was Ryan very organically started using abilities that did not match any of the character sheets. And we had some players at the table who read them very carefully.
Mhm.
So when they're asking, we only have humans and orcs, why does he have 120 feet dark vision?
Yeah.
Why is he detecting elementals and undead in the area? So organically over the course of the session, they were starting to suspect something was up pretty blatantly.
Right.
And then when you did the reveal, a couple of the players said, "Screw the Baron. He's a high ranking member of the Vanguard. He's worth more money." And so the only reason you survived is the party split their focus.
Yep.
But oh boy, did we almost lose you.
Yeah, and it was almost. I mean, listen, for those of you who don't know in Discord, my avatar is Valisteer. I mean, it's a very near and dear character to me. But one of the things that we talked about was, you have to sacrifice. If they're going to kill you, I'm not saving you, and I didn't expect to be saved in that. And trying to wrap up this segment. I mean, the thing that made it cool for the players was that they chose to break off, right, and
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm going for him now. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
desired effect that you want, right? You want that engagement from players. And the second you sense that engagement, whether it's, fighting me or fighting them or whatever it is, that when they light up and go, "Yup, that's what I want now," you won. You did it, right? Because you've had a good session because they have found value or fun or a motivation that they never really came in with to begin,
They want to
right?
give back to the story you've created.
Exactly. So short story, I fly up and one of the what was the class? He shot me out of the air. It was a tripping attack. I
Not the
cannot
chip.
remember.
Oh,
Champ
it's the Battle Master,
Battle
Battle Master
Master.
fighter.
Thank you. Yeah, it had a tripping attack or tripping shot and hit me as I was flying up with the Baron in my arms, full Titanic style, trying to shoot through the roof. And I landed. Now the Baron had a levitation cloak, was up in the air. I hit the ground and I landed in the middle of everyone. And if two more
Boy.
people had chosen to attack me, I was dead. I mean,
How much? Yeah, what was your starting health? What was your ending health? You went from like 130 to 40.
127 and 60-ish, low 60s. And that was just a
Jesus.
single round. I mean, they could have decimated me. And then I do distinctly remember telling people, I looked at the table and I said, "You better kill me this round." Because
Yep, and you meant it.
and I meant it
Yep.
full on. So anyway, I
And
shot back
Sean,
up. I did escape with it, but it was a fun night.
Well,
I would
I
say,
was curious here because listening to you guys talking, obviously you had a great session and took a little bit of planning and stuff. The question came to me was how did you relegate or at least feel like you had to relegate player agency? Do you feel like you were taking some agency from them, or like how did that kind of play out? Because when you introduce a character like Valisteer, who's higher level, immediately players see, oh, you're higher level, or you're out here to kill us. You know what I mean?
Right. So I at the very beginning and probably a quarter way through, maybe a third of the way through, I was trying to desperately help them achieve their objective.
Right.
Right. I was not going against them. I felt the way the party wanted to go,
Right.
and then I tried to go that way. I mean, we could talk for a while about it. We don't have a ton of time, but the party was hostile to begin with. So
Hmm.
I
yep.
I followed. right? I went in the shadows. I did, try and sneakily grab a ledger, just asking for it. It was given, and that's fine, And then when I went in, again, it was not me that engaged, it was somebody else. I followed their lead, right?
Right.
And I tried to do what the players were doing. And then eventually there comes a point where Valis wants to get the Baron out.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have hung in there as best I could for a long time, but again, that's not the point. The point is to give the players
Right.
something new, something different. And so I deferred to Nathan. I said, "This is your game. Use Valis as a pawn." And he said, "You should probably think about revealing yourself now." Right. And so kind of just like any DM would take an NPC and turn the plot twist, it was just like,
Mhm.
okay, now you're this.
Right.
And I became that. Right. And I tried to just focus on the objective that Nathan and I laid out to begin with and not deviate or steal spotlight. It was mainly just let's add another diversion for them to try and cope with in this mechanic, rather than just, like as Nathan put, it's a big boss battle and there's skeletons and things like that. Now you've got a twist.
Right.
Yep.
And
Well, it
letting them
sounds like
react
you
to it.
guys pulled it off very well. I mean, from the reactions and just again, we all see this when it's over and we're packing our stuff up and get ready to get out because we have a hard out time at Timothy's. I just the response I got from other players, everybody was so just there was such a buzz. Everybody was really high on that story and what happened and all the little twists and turns. And I know Jeremy's table had a similar twist and turn that was really, really good.
Yeah.
Craig's table was really good and it had
Oh my
Lawrence
God.
table too.
and
And
Laird's
all of
table
them,
was
Paul's,
unbelievable.
everybody. Yeah.
Where than a giant tower?
Oh,
I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll be putting
dragon
up.
and
Yeah, God.
oh my god, it was so cool.
Mm.
And that's what we talk about all the time, and that's what makes our events fun is that we are willing to go to any length to make sure the players have a good time and make it enjoyable for them and make it something unique. I mean, it's not the
Right.
easiest thing to do, but I do think we pull it off pretty well.
I
Yeah.
know it started as these DM ideas we had, but I think to me something that stands out that really illustrates everything from Night of Falling Stars to even what we're putting into Tabletop for Chop, what we really get out of doing this. And it really is, at the end of the day, as DMs, it's about the players, right? It's about the heroes. It's about the stories that you are creating with the other people at your table. And to me, one of at least my indications that my game went well, and let alone the entire night, was we had one player from my table who he was the one who the instant Ryan revealed that he's
Mhm.
Vanguard, like laser focused, like he dropped everything
Right.
to try and kill Ryan.
Yeah.
And Sean, did you hear about the messaging he and Ryan have been having post game? Because I think
Yeah, a
it
little bit of it.
illustrates. Yeah, he was so engaged with what we did that night that he's been asking if he can totally make a new character where it is effectively his monomaterial character leveled down to be in line, but undercover in the Vanguard with the intention of killing you, Brian,
Yeah.
or your character.
Yeah.
And to me, like, that's player engagement
Right.
right there.
That's
And all
huge
out
one.
of us trying to do this kind of crazy stuff.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. That
I can't wait to see what we do out of Tabletop for Chop.
It
now
doesn't get
next.
any better because when somebody asks you to do that, like some people's first reaction is like, no, I mean, I don't want to kill my character. But this story is again, you got to remember, like, it's not about the DM precious. It's about the whole story and
Right.
everybody's telling it. And that makes it special.
Yeah,
It does.
it's a shared experience across all of our players, and again, what we talk about, we have these moments throughout all of our games that really stand out as the essence of what we've been talking about is connectivity within our stories, connectivity within players and people and DMs, and just this whole universe that we've kind of been playing in for the last 18 months. It's amazing when we get the reactions that we want. And so far, I think we've been hitting it out of the park all across the board. Kudos all to you guys and our community and
Our
everybody. Yeah, our
players. Yeah.
players. A lot to our players. We talk about this all the time. Somebody is, what is a crowdsourced campaign? What happened at Night of Falling Stars is a great example of a crowdsourced campaign. We do not know how this is going to turn out. We have tent poles. We have stakes in the ground on where we want the story to go, but our players, You guys have to understand you drive this story and make us better DMs and better storytellers by your actions in this process. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And if you liked hearing about this special event, then I have some good news for you. Yet again, as we've plugged 1,000 times, right now, this is our mid-October episode. For our next big thing that we're prepping for is Tabletop for Chop, again on November 3rd, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time and going till 10 p.m. I'll be DMing at 6 p.m., but we also have another DM going at 10. And let me do my math real quick. That would be 2 o'clock is when the other one is. Yep. So we'll have 3 sessions. If you can't catch all of them, at least catch some.
Yep.
They'll be up again on our YouTube channel. They'll be up again on the archive on Twitch. And we highly encourage you to, again, if you can't donate, at least watch, share with your friends, engage in any way. If you're local to Delaware, come out on that day, get tickets for the event for some of the TTRPG tables available. Come say hi, come support Days and Nights. And again, just watch the stream, tell your friends, help share this passion that we have. If you just are coming for the podcast, also, we'll do another episode just like this, because the next big episode that we want to talk about will be just like this, but instead of it being the Night of Falling Stars, we'll talk to you guys after Tabletop for Chop about that night, the experience, and all that we put into planning it.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be something really special. We're putting all of our energy really into making it something great, and we're going to continue to promote, and you'll hear us talk about this on our social channels and stuff. And again, if you haven't gotten tickets, definitely, there's still some available, so grab them when you can. There'll be links as well as a QR to follow along. It's going to be a great night, and I really want. It's going to be an experiment again, as we're going to, try out this new, not new, but a streamed version of what the Vanguard brings to the table every night. So it should be fun.
At this point, we do have to do our question of the episode. So the thing I'd like to specifically ask is, in general to everyone, what are some other special events that maybe you could envision running in your own personal games? Right. I promise it's not so we can steal them, although I will be reading intently. But whether it be with your own crowdsourced campaigns or even ones that you have already run, ones that you have already run. That's a hard sentence to say. And bonus points if it's a charitable event that you've run, like Tabletop for Chop. We're giving out our energy and we're hoping to spread the love, and we'd like to see some of the ways that you guys have given out in your own communities or would like to.
Yeah, that's gonna be that'd be I'd love to hear the stories and hear some of the ideas and things that other players and other DMs have run in their games. For us, it's an experiment for us to really just try to connect more with our audience and connect more with our players and you as a community to help raise money for a really great cause. I mean, Extra Life does a lot for kids, and I'm really proud of what we've accomplished so far. But I think the November 3rd event's going to take it over the top, and you get to really see what we bring to our players, month after month, session after session.
I can't wait. So again, as always, if you want to support us, please help us spread the message, help us with the algorithm, give the video a like, give the podcast a like, drop a comment below. We really do read every single one. And of course, please subscribe, follow on Spotify, follow on YouTube, share with your friends, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone on YouTube, for watching yet another episode of the Vanguard Chronicles podcast. We hope you had as much fun as we did recording it. While you're here, go ahead and please answer the question of the week down in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, help us out with those metrics, and absolutely subscribe so you know when more of our content's coming. Sean, I had a great time, and I hope you did, and I can't wait to see everyone on the next one.